you guys looking more towards film, or are you looking at audio and podcast projects? Or are you interested in both? Do you just want us to ramble? We can do that.
By quick whoop whoop, who here is interested in film? And who is interested in other non-film projects?
Okay,
Evenly
so
split.
we will make sure that we talk about both.
What projects are...
Oh, where was Tel Radio? The table, the loud table.
So radio
Oh,
stuff?
okay.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Alright, cool.
Yeah, yeah.
But
Excellent.
we're
Alright.
looking to, actually get good.
We want get good.
Yes.
Which is why
I'll make that go. Well, that you. I
To
mean,
read
you're.
makes our speaking
You,
English good.
yeah, you are excellent on that, especially I think on the radio stuff.
Well, yeah, I think that if you look at our website, we look like we've got our shit together. But there is quite a...
Ahead of us.
That is actually having a good webmaster and somebody that can make your website look really snazzy and not just relying on, like, not to diss on Squarespace because, eventually I might do a podcast they want to sponsor, but a lot of times people can tell that you just kind of used a template and you just kind of threw something up. So that is a place that I would say if you've got a friend that, a best friend that you can guilt into doing your website like I did, that's great. And ours is a WordPress template, actually, but she sort of tailored it. But yeah, your web presence is really going to make something look good, and have that ready before you go. That's part of pre-production. So that's part of it. Okay, let me figure out how to start at the beginning. One of the first things you want to start thinking about is what actually you want your project to do, where you want it to go, who you want to listen to it or to watch it. Because a lot of the decisions you're going to make are going to be very particular to that. For example, Introductions Necessary, which is my podcast, is a daily podcast, which is not a great idea. I won't encourage it. But it's also 2.5 minutes long, very specifically because we want it to be able to be used in school curriculums. And I know one of the people that works on it is a school teacher. She teaches in high school in Virginia. She has to teach the SOLs. She has to make sure that she hits X, Y, and Z. She has to teach the list of 10 dead white guys that they have to know on the test. She doesn't have time to have her kids listen to a long podcast, ever. So I wanted to get something that could be done in what at her school they call bell work, which is when the kids first come in, they give them something to do until the bell rings. If they get there a little early, which, they're kids, they don't do. But so the idea was to have something very short, little bits and pieces that, A, can capture a young child's imagination a little bit. I try to gear the writing towards middle school and above. And so it really was sitting and thinking, like, what is the purpose of this? That tailored a whole lot of how we designed it, how we write it, how long it's going to be, and things like that. With Good Game, I actually went
What's
into
Good Game?
Good Game is a feature-length documentary about...
See, she taught me how to do interviews, so
Yes.
I should do that. I've got DVDs everywhere. You bring your DVD every time. You're totally plugging your...
I always have...
Yeah.
Well, this is the thing. I went to a Dragon Con one time where a guy in the audience at a panel started talking about his movie when he was asking his question and held up his DVD and was like, it's only $10 or, it's $10, $20, whatever, and I have it in my bag right now. And after the panel, I was like, that was audacious, and I'm going to buy your DVD just because of that.
Damn it.
There's a way...
I've got a $10 DVD at the table in there. It's really good. Sorry, go on.
Yeah, I do also have a table with lots of stuff. But, so Good Game is a feature-length documentary about professional gamers. We followed a professional StarCraft team for about a year. And one of the things with it going in was, my idea for it was I wanted to make sure that it was a film that I actually didn't want to gear it towards gamers watching it. Because in my mind, they already know these guys. They already know the professional SC2 scene. They already know a lot of the story.
So what you're saying now, this would like fit into pre-production, and that this
Right.
is the what you did in advance.
So this is like, when I was sitting and coming up with, I think you were on the panel where I mentioned, like, I came up with, what is my central question? What is when somebody watches my movie, what question do I want to make sure I've answered before the movie is over? And so that was what I kept coming back to, and I wanted to make sure that this was something that was accessible to an audience that did not game, which doesn't exist anymore. Everyone has one of these in their pockets. There are Nintendo Wii's at senior centers, like, everybody's a gamer now. But at the time I was like, the people that aren't hardcore, the people that don't have a PlayStation and don't buy the latest thing, I want them to sort of understand what this is. So that informed a lot of decisions. What am I going to film? What questions am I going to ask? How am I going to do it? But I did also sit and say at every point that I wanted to make sure that it was respectful of gamers. That they weren't going to watch it and be like, oh god, this is so dumbed down, it's really boring. And that they weren't going to be like, this is insulting.
Yeah.
So that I think is where you have to start, is say like, what do I want this to do? Where do I want this, like when I'm done with this, when it's out in the world, what do I want to have accomplished? And the other thing I think is to also think a little bit about the size of your audience.
The size of your audience, I think that your audience in general, like when you're talking about film from a conception process, who are you selling this to? How old are they? What do they want? What can you include? What can you not include?
Do you know what my schedule is?
No, you don't need your schedule. That's my son. Cameo appearance from my son. Please go back to the children's room and don't leave until I'm done. Good to see you. Well, that was awesome. Sorry.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's the thing is that, you know, for a little bit of my background, I have 2 film degrees. I didn't learn my lesson the first time. And that's one thing that when you go to a formal film production class, they will start talking about market segments and like, you know, audience demographics and things like that. And I do think that at the level that we're at and at the level that the industry is at right now, that's a little bit of overkill. Like, you know, I'm not making the Avengers.
Yeah.
And the Avengers does have to think about all that. Like, you know, the Warcraft movie is the way that it is because they said we're going to make more money in China and we're going to make it for China. So that is something that a lot of those people have to think about. But I think that those are still good questions to ask. Like, do you want this to be accessible to 18-year-olds? Do you want your podcast to be rated R or X?
For instance, the movie that I'm making now, which I can't talk about what it is, but I'm going to talk a lot about the process of what I'm doing right now. It is decidedly PG-13. If it's not going to get a rating, we're not going to submit it to the MPAA. But the 4 movies I've made prior to this, they were all what you would call rated R, mostly for language, and you know the first 3 for a ton of violence and stuff like that.
I imagine ninjas.
So right now the conversations that I'm having is very specifically the new movie I'm making is violent, but it's in a genre where I want to be able to skew slightly younger, and so we're talking about the differences. It goes all the way down to design. It goes down to the script. What can be in the script? What can't? You know, if you decapitate an orc and black blood flies out of its body, it's PG-13. If you decapitate a human and red blood comes out of its body, it's rated R. You know, how are you accommodating that? So I think that when you're looking, at least, you know, again at our level, you can't just assume everyone's going to see the film. You have to somehow find a way to access the audience that you want. If you're going to have your audience cut off because you've decided, you know, my artistic vision, you know, absolutely must have, you know, naked women being decapitated by people who curse a lot, then you know what? You're not going to get that demo that you might want to access your film. So sometimes modifying the vision to suit the audience you're going for from a writing and creative standpoint is an important, I guess, first step.
And I think that that's part of why I say to sort of sit and think about why you're doing this, because you're going to get to a moment on set or, you know, while you're recording your podcast, while you're working on this project, there's going to be a dark night of the soul that is not just a screenwriting term. You're going to have days where you hate everything about this, you don't know where it's going, you're very confused, what are you doing this for, you're looking at this cut and it's just not working. When you can go back to one question, one audience, this like, you know, one paragraph even that you sketched out on a napkin, and you can go back to that and say, this is what I'm doing, this is why I'm doing this, even if you don't have that, you're having that sort of emotional, I hate everything about this, that's still going to help guide your decisions in the difficult times. And I can say for absolute certainty that happened several times on this in post-production, because we had a really rough post-production process. Not because of lack of pre-production, but I will say, one of the reasons that pre-production is so important is because post-production is difficult. It is really hard. And it is really hard for a lot of reasons that if you did everything perfect all the way up until when you picture wrap, post-production is still hard. And anything you can do to alleviate those problems before you get to them is going to make everybody's life a little better. And when you have somebody on set that actually, in all seriousness, says we'll fix it in post, you want to be able to throw a grape at their head.
And I was that guy. So
Right.
we had
I've done it.
we had a genius post-production guy on the Ninjas movies, who unfortunately has passed away since then. But his name was Brian, and we had a little Brian bucket where if anyone said, it's like the curse word bucket, we'll fix it in post, you had to put it in there. And Brian was able to accomplish and fix a lot of what we were doing. But in retrospect, doing pre-production was the way to alleviate a lot of what he had to do.
Right.
And knowing what you have to fix in post before you roll camera is the thing that you need to know how to do. I would like to, and I see some of it, looking over your notes, like some of the nitty gritty of what, like if you had to say the top 5 things that you need to make sure that you do, you've got a script, you've got your equipment, you can just go shoot, right? No.
Okay.
So what are the 5 things you think are the most important?
I would say, like, first of all, having a script is a good idea. Documentary is a little different, but, I do not go for improv stuff where you're just like, we know we want this scene to accomplish this. That's not my style. I'm not going to knock it because I don't do it. But when you have a script, like, we'll talk about fiction for a little bit. When you have a script, this is actually, because I'm one of those people, one of my favorite things to do is I love to get a pack of colored pencils or colored highlighters, and then you go through your script and you can make your little key for however you want it, but every character gets highlighted in green, every prop gets highlighted in pink, every location gets highlighted in yellow, and you go through the script and you make sure that you have those colors so that it pops, because then you're going to make a list. Here are the 10 characters that I need. Here are the 35 props that we're going to need to find. Here are the locations that we're going to need to have. And so doing those breakdowns is going to give you a very concrete sense of what you need. And you can look at that props list and say, like, I can do this. We're only going to need 3 props, so I don't need to hire a prop guy. Or you look at it and you say, oh my God, I need 100 props, including 50 dead zombie heads. I'm going to need a prop guy. This is definitely beyond me. But the other thing that's going to help you with is your schedule, because that is...
We'll talk about this.
Yeah.
The schedule is, I could do an entire panel on making a schedule.
Yeah, exactly. The schedule is very imperative. I have storyboards and shot lists written down because I have run shoots without storyboards and shot lists, and they were painful and they were difficult. And the main thing that saved me was I had a very experienced script supervisor working with me. She was my script supervising mentor, and she agreed to shoot this film with me as a favor, which is fantastic. She's a union and really good. And so there were moments where I was like, oh my God, I just don't even, can I put the camera here? I don't know if I can put the camera here. And she was like, okay, if you put the camera here and we have this move, and it's going to match up with this shot.
And you need that. I mean, even at my level where it's been relatively inexpensive, what we've made. I'll give you an exact problem. We had one day was a crazy shoot. We shot a movie with 500 special effects and 35 minutes of fighting for $14,000. And we had a giant scene that was in front of a big house where there were 7 fights going on all at the same time. It was kind of like the airport scene in Civil War. It's just like little fights that are going on all over. Every single scene was great. I actually love every single one of those little fights. And so what I would do, because I was director, DP, and cinematographer and camera operator, I was all of them because that's all there was, and only I knew what I wanted to get. So I was, there was another guy who was going around with us who was better than me, getting better shots than I was, but because I was like, no, I'm getting what I want, and then I looked at the footage, and his footage was probably better. So we went around and basically when I would say action, everybody would kind of mime their fights except for the person who I was on. So if I caught someone in the background, and I was
they're going at 50.
I was sort of improvising shots because I really wanted to get sort of as the fight's going on, I'm trying to shake the camera and move it around and sort of add intensity to it. And I shot all of that. And then we finished and we wrapped everything, and I said, okay, what did I get? I got this. I'm great. and we wrapped the location, and we brought all our stuff home. We shook the hand of the guy who was letting us use the location. We moved on, and in between, I was trying to edit a rough cut while we were shooting, so that I had something at the end, and I got, 2 weeks later, I had kind of a rough cut of that fight. And I realized I did a great job of shooting all the fights, and I never got any footage of characters who moved from one fight to the other. So,
Right.
so when people are walking, and to boil this down to a not giant fight situation, then I'll tell you what I end up having to do. You can have, there's somebody there, and Johnny here has to go talk to both of them. He talks to this person, he talks to that person. Because of schedules, you don't have these two people at the same time, so you shoot this person here and you shoot that person there. You wrap your location, and what you've never done is shot the shot of Johnny walking across the room, because what you've been focused on is the scene, and Johnny walks across the room is one sentence right here. And this is 4 pages and this is 4 pages, and you never shot the one sentence because you're not paying attention, because you're, on an indie film, you're the director, producer, writer, editor, caterer sometimes, like that's, so you're focused on those things. And then what do? In my case, we got the location back, which was great, but the actor was gone. He was out of the country. He left.
Oh, wow.
We ended up having to take one of our other actors who sort of looked like the guy, and shoot him literally like to his shoulders. Right. So I found a shot that was after I had said cut, where I said cut, and then I said, okay, everyone come over here, and they hadn't turned off the camera, and the actor who I needed looked over, oh, what's going on? And then there was cut. Right. So I got the shot of his head moving this way, and then from shoulders down, I have the guy walking away from the camera, and that's how we got the shot. And if I had had that sort of experienced script supervisor, like you're talking about, right, that's the person who'd be like going, hey, dude, hold on. This highlighted line, you didn't get this, and you're so hyper-focused on what's going on, that's, so as an example of why a script supervisor, someone who is not you, who is like, you can't do it, your brain will be on the creative process where it should be. You need someone who's there making sure that you're not missing stuff.
Yeah, that's my thing that to get into production for 2 seconds, that's my thing that when people say where can I save money because I'm a low budget film, I'm like, do not save money on your script supervisor. Pay them well, get someone that's good, because they will save your life over and over. And I'm not just saying that because I am a script supervisor. Because I have had that happen where you're just sitting there I don't know how to make this work. And they can come up with some brilliant stuff on the day. But also, I don't know if you did storyboards for that fight.
Somewhat, yes.
But being able to look through storyboards would have also helped you maybe identify that before you got on set, that you needed to make sure. Storyboards don't have to be as pretty as you see them in the behind the scenes on DVDs. I do storyboards with literal, not even stick figures. What I do are triangles with circles on top. If it's a dude, it's a triangle with the tall part, and if it's a woman, it's a triangle with the pointy part on the top, and then a circle for their head. And that's what I do. And it's very vague, it's very just sort of sketchy, but that also enables you to have a good conversation with your cinematographer if you're not shooting it yourself.
Real quick, let me ask you this. Is there anybody in the audience who doesn't know what a storyboard is? Good, okay, go.
Okay. Awesome. And one thing that it occurs to me while you were telling that story is, this is the thing that I think should encourage everyone to think about pre-production, is pre-production saves you money.
Yep.
Because you're always going to end up at a point in your project where there are only 2 ways to solve your problem: time or money.
Well, that's the triangle, right? Time's here, money's here, quality is here.
Right.
So you can make something for no money that's of high quality, but then you have to spend all the time.
Right.
And you can make something very, very quick that's high quality, but you need to spend all the money. And you can make something quick for no money, but you can't. That thing is not going to have quality. Right. So you always have to sort of keep in mind that triangle, and the place, time, especially your time, is free to you.
Right.
So use that, and where you can, because you're not going to have time in production. So.
Right. And so I guess the thing to jump into might be a little bit of talk about scheduling. Again, we could fill probably an entire convention on scheduling, especially for film.
Before we do, I would like to jump back to what we were talking about before, because before you do the scheduling, and we had started with the script supervisor, and the reason I'm focused on this is because that's where I am right now. the most important thing, even more than storyboards, even maybe more than having a finished script, is assembling your crew.
Yes.
And knowing who you need and what you need. And sometimes, there's no, for low budget filmmaking, there is not a template. There's not a, like you can't have everything they have on a major set. So in terms of the things and that you need to have, absolutely yes, a script supervisor.
Right.
You absolutely need to have a first AD, which is a first assistant director whose job, whose job is largely undefined, except that they run the set. They're like a stage manager in a play.
Right.
They are the ones who make sure the people are where they need to be. So
They're the professional bad guy.
Yeah. They are, professional bad guy and also set mom.
Right.
And
Exactly.
also, they make sure that they make sure everyone's they're supposed to be. They make sure that maybe not that everybody's happy, but that nobody's desperately unhappy. Their job is to make it so that I can. In the last movie, her name was Liz, and it makes it so I can be there, on like in the moment on what's going on the set itself, and I can just go Liz, I need.
Right.
And Liz figures out, and then she, in the case of Monsters, had a crew under her that she worked with, and they work sometimes harder than you do. So the first AD, script supervisor, if you're having anything over than, let's say, a cast of 4 and a crew of, an on-set crew of like 5 or 6, you absolutely need someone whose job is to be like preparing the food.
Yeah, I was going to say craft services is another place where I say don't skimp. There are ways to save money on Crafty. I actually, when I shot my thesis, we worked out deals with local restaurants that if we put their name in the credits, they would give us like 20% off on food and things like that. And also because I shot it in my hometown, so it was like, this restaurant was owned by so-and-so's boyfriend's mother kind of thing. But that's one of my biggest things, and that is something that you do have to think about before you get there, because when you, even up to about a week before you shoot, if you're the director, you do not have the time or the energy to think about whether or not you're going to get sandwiches and who's going to get the coffee.
So, and this is jumping into production itself, but
Right.
Right now we're like literally 2 nights ago talking about how to feed 50 people for $75,
Right.
which you can do, and they can be happy, but you need to be prepared. So you need someone who's like, I can make a giant vat of spaghetti and spaghetti sauce and have some bowls and some bread and some like people are happy. You could spend $1 per person on everybody having spaghetti, and they're going to be happier than if you spend $3 per person to get them all pizza.
Right.
Like if the idea that you cooked it or made it, like if you get Subway sandwiches, people are like, yay, which are expensive. If you make ham sandwiches with some chips,
Yeah.
people, my experience has been that it's something about the fact that it was homemade.
Right.
People have generally been happier. So you can save money doing there, but again, that has to be worked out and planned and budgeted.
Right.
You need to, when you're doing your budget meetings, have, okay, I've got $100 for this day, I've got 50 people to spend. You need to walk through a Giant or something and go, how are we going to make that work?
Who has a Costco membership?
Yeah, and how are we going to make people happy for that? And again, if you don't, you'll find yourself on the day spending 10 times as much to
Right.
hit a restaurant or a Panera or something, and then you'll be kicking yourself.
And that's also when, I think this is probably a job that usually falls to the first AD, that you want to make sure that people on your cast and crew and people that are working for you, if they have dietary restrictions, because it's really terrible to get it on set and have ordered pizza and find out that someone's gluten-free because they have celiacs, and if they eat that pizza, they're going to get sick and then not be able to hold the boom mic anymore, and things like that. Like, those are all, I mean, this sort of gets into one of my notes, which is worst case scenario thinking. It is a terrible thing to have in your everyday life. It is your best friend on a film set. When you're preparing for a film set, if you're one of those people that sits and thinks, this is, this could happen, and this could happen, and this thing could happen, and what if this happens? That's actually great. It's really helpful. So, because this is the one thing. Whatever you come up with isn't going to be what happens. When you sit there and you think, like, what if I get to the location and the guy, like, the door's locked and, like, the store's shut down and nobody can find anybody? That's probably not what's going to happen. But you get to the location and suddenly the guy doesn't want to sign a location release, or there was a pipe that burst the night before.
Yeah.
Well, you've had that moment where you were like, what am I going to do if this crazy thing happens? And you sit and you think, well, that crazy thing didn't happen, but I can adapt that plan for this crazy thing that did just happen.
Always have a plan B, especially if you're outside. Like
Right.
you know.
Yeah,
And you said be prepared for the worst. Right now, again, the crew building and budget of what we're working on. The film we're about to make is probably going to be another like $15,000 film. I have set aside $1,000 for as just as petty cash,
yeah,
and another $2,000 that just says buffer, and that's what's in my schedule.
Yeah.
$1,000 for petty cash for, hey man, I forgot my credit card and I got to run home. Can I have some money for gas? You don't have to go. Well, you need to be sure to pay me back that $15 tomorrow. You just want to be able to go. Don't worry about it, man. Here, you're good.
yeah,
If someone goes, oh, I was wearing the red contact lenses and this one fell out, I can't find it. I know you got it for $50 on Amazon, but now I need it. We need it for now. Okay, run to the mall and get the $150 one that you can get from wherever, because you need to get it right now. And that's that's a fifth of our budget
right.
that has been set aside for things will go wrong, and you
Right.
have to be
And that's
prepared.
that thing that it's either going to take time or money, and once you start shooting, the time is gone.
Yes.
Which is a good segue back into the schedule.
Oh boy.
So here's the thing.
There's a
with
reason I
making-
keep changing the subject
I
when you
know.
say schedule.
Here's the thing with making a schedule. You will always, always, always fill the time you allotted. I have been on one set, one time, in the years I've been doing this, that wrapped early. Once. And that was a commercial that had no dialogue. You will fill the time. It's just, that's what it is, you will fill it. So, I have been on so many sets where people were so ambitious because they were like, we can set up the shot in 10 minutes, and we have a flip midway through, and that's only gonna take 10 minutes. Well, you don't realize in that 10 minutes you're gonna flip a breaker,
Yeah.
or the actor is going to like fall off of something and like need medical help or something. So when you're making your schedule, give yourself a lot of room and be realistic. The other thing is, when you're making your schedule, this is the most complicated. Scheduling is extremely complicated, and that's why I actually had like almost an entire class in it in grad school. Because you want to think about things like, when you're making a fiction film, your locations. You want to lump together all of your shots that are in one location. You want to think about your actors, what schedule they can be there, whether or not it matches up with your other actors. Like, there are entire expensive computer programs designed just to help you balance all of these things. There are a lot of things to juggle.
Now let's add to that if, at least on my level, many of the people you're not paying up front. Like,
Right.
people are getting paid on kids, people are volunteering, getting paid, if the film makes money, which everyone kind of knows that it has a high chance of not making money,
Right.
so you and you're working with people around here who, this is what they're doing on the weekend, and so, you don't have 10 days in a row to shoot because nobody can do it, and, suddenly you have a situation where getting everybody that you need at the same time on the same day.
Right.
You
And
know.
you can only use the location for like 2 hours, and then they're closed before they come in to vacuum or something. And,
Yeah.
and some locations you're gonna have the guy's gonna be like, yeah, you should probably be out by 10 or so, like that'd be fine. And you have some where they're like, if you're not out, completely out of this building, hard out, 10 o'clock, none of you are here, then that guy is going to flip out. And so, there are a lot of things to take into account. So spending the time to really make a really good schedule, I cannot stress enough how important it is. The other thing when you're making your schedule is to go ahead and start thinking about your priorities, because, like I said, you're gonna fill the time. There's a very good chance that you're not gonna have time to shoot everything you put on that schedule. And there is going to be a point where your script supervisor is gonna look at you and say, you don't have time for these 3 shots. You can tell the story with these 2. Or you can tell it with these 2. Which 2 do you want more? And having thought about that ahead of time and making a priority list makes that a lot less of a panic moment of like, oh my god, but I want all 3, they're gonna be so beautiful, you have no idea. Like, having sat back and said it would be great if we had a close-up of her because it's a really emotional moment, but if we don't have it, the scene's not completely about, make sure you know what you absolutely have to tell your story, so you don't miss that connective tissue in the rush to finish because you to be out of the location.
Well, and the flip side of that is, and I'm going to jump into production real quick.
Well, they're so intertwined.
And I will tell you again, the Justin Timpane film school, which is this. One, admit to your actors on the very first day that when you say that the shoot is going to be done at midnight, it might be done at 2. Make sure they know. Say, I'm going to try to make that not be the case. Please don't schedule something for 12:01, because
Right.
just make people understand ahead of time. Always build in that it's going to be extra time. Like you don't schedule the connecting plane 10 minutes after your plane lands. Second thing, everybody's excited on the beginning of every day of shooting. The beginning of every day is a wonderful, glorious time where
You all got your caffeine.
we're artists, we're all sitting there, we're
Bagels.
shooting shit about what happened last night, we're having a good time. Oh yeah, we can start 10 minutes later because it's a really good conversation. Oh, it's good to see you. So then you get going. Oh man, that first shot, you're setting up the lights perfect. Hold on. Let's just get the hairline just a little better. Hold on, so you spend all your time on the first 2 shots, first 3 shots. It's a 10-hour day, you're gonna have all the time in the world. So you just push a little, you make your shots perfect. And the first half of the day is great. And then you're like, oh boy, we have not gotten everything right. So the second, let's say the second third of the day is that's kind of where you should have been at the beginning of the day. We're kind of going. Third of the day, you're still catching up. The wonderful work you're doing on shot 1, you are actively subtracting from the work that you need to do on shot 50 of the day.
Right.
And you need to know that when you're doing shot 1. You need to know shot 1 needs to be, it's almost more important for it to be on time than for it to be right. Because what you're going to be doing, or at least what I was ending up doing, is when you get to shot 50, you're like, just go, just find it. Okay, you're good. Okay, okay, then that's good. Like you're slamming in shots that you shouldn't be spending time.
You call cut too fast.
Yeah.
You don't give time for the reactions. Yeah.
And you robbed those shots when you were the first part of the day, asking how everybody's night was, and getting that light just right. Stay on schedule as best you can.
Yeah.
And don't say we'll make it work, because what you're doing, if you want to have extra time for your awesome shots, have those be the shots at the end of the day.
Yeah.
Just go, I'm going to do the first shots as fast as I can, so that at the end of the day, if I have extra time, I can get the best shots. But don't ever make your best shots the first shots of the day, because you're actively stealing.
And these are things that having a good pre-production meeting with your first AD when you're working on the schedule, you can look at your first AD and say, this is the shot that's important. And when your first AD comes to you and says you're off schedule and you need to pick it up, don't be like, oh, whatever. No. Your first AD is there to be the bad guy to you too.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, that's having pre-production meetings is where you can sit and work out these things and say, this is what we need to front load the day with. This is what we need to do.